Hey, party people. That's Cliff. How you doing? I hope you guys are having a good day. I am. Went to a haircut place yesterday, but they were booked up, so couldn't get to the full thing. Let's see. Here's this fella up ahead of us. I don't know what he's doing. He's living. He's doing what he's doing. He's got a cart full of stuff and just out in the middle of the street. That's what happens around here in LA. You know, it's weird. I've said this before, but homeless is a mental health problem and not a housing problem. You know, it's when people are down on their luck, when there's no opportunities, when the economy goes to shit, that's when everything starts to happen. So, and that's one of those things where, like, I was talking with a police officer at one point long ago, and he was saying that, people will they will behave in a certain way if you do a certain thing. And oh, there goes my glasses. Oh no, they're right here. It's all good. Maybe we'll put them on. But essentially, like, if you give if you give a homeless person, like, a few bucks, and then you're like the 10th person to give them a few bucks, they're going to be encouraged to continue to beg for money, because that's the easiest way, right? And you can think about the universe as like the universe wants to be lazy, and in other words, like, everyone wants to find the easiest way to make money. And for the homeless folks, that's begging for money, and people give them money. There's nothing wrong with that, but it encourages them to continue to beg for money. And I don't know, like, the homeless thing has always been there. I don't think it'll be solved, because, like, one way to do it is like, oh, just round up all the homeless guys and get them into put them into housing. It's like, okay, well, then you're infringing on their right to to stay out on the street. And then you make it illegal for them to stay out on the street, and then it's a perpetual motion machine, where you got the what is it? That's why it's so complicated, because, like, not my pauses, even though it looks weird on video, my pauses are sort of like thinking and, like, reasoning of, like, how to actually, like, figure it out, like, in your head. And you hear there's always stories, where homeless people will live on at the side of a building. There's a story in LA. They'll be in a little alleyway next to a building. They'll collect a whole bunch of stuff, garbage that gets thrown out, and then all of a sudden it was, like, lit on fire. And then the building owner is like, their building has fire damage to it, and it's like, oh well, can they do business now? Now that business is ruined. There was actually another one. I was in the kitchen at work, and I walk over there, and there's a 2-story building. It's like a storage thing when you're looking out of the building. And then behind that, there was a fire, and that fire got really big. It got, like, over this 2-story building, you could see the flames, like, billowing up, like, above it. And it's one of those things where you're just like, well, because where I work, we know where there's a homeless encampment all the way over there. So the homeless will collect stuff and they'll put it all together, and you've seen the videos and pictures. And it's, same thing with Skid Row, and like, I think there was a security guy at one of these studios that I worked for, and he at a time like worked with a group of folks who went down to Skid Row and like gave people basic medical needs, see if they're hurt or whatever, and pretty much he was saying like, if you're ever homeless like in LA, never go to Skid Row, because if you go there, you're gonna get trapped there because the other people that are homeless that are surrounding you, and they're gonna shoot you up with drugs or get you high on something, and then that's it. Like you're just there in that homeless encampment, homeless system. It's just like that fella pushing the cart. It's like, and I guess that's the other thing too, right? Is that like that's the first homeless guy we've seen today. There'll probably be like 3 or 4 more. Maybe one homeless guy will ask me for money, and I'm like, sorry, I can't help you, And the reality is that you feel for them, you feel that you want to help, but if you help every single one of them, at the end of the day, I might be out, $50. Some folks can spare $50 a day. I think one of my friends, he does. He does it this way. Every day he saves $1, and if somebody asks for that $1 on that day, he has $1. He'll give them that $1, and then it starts over. If nobody asks him for money, he'll save it. Like say like after 10 days, nobody asks him for money, but on the 10th day somebody does. He'll have $10 saved up purposely to give to somebody who asks for it, and I think that's honorable. I think that's I think that's a good system if you want to do that, and he caps it out at $30 or whatever. But yeah, like if you really wanted to solve the homeless problem, it's like, okay, well, who's going to pay for it? Nobody wants to pay for it. The housing communities don't want to pay for it. The business doesn't want to pay for it. You say the government wants to pay for it, but if you have $1 billion, then you pay, then everybody wants to take their cut of the salaries, and nothing gets sold. The tiny homes like project that could help solve like homeless and give people places to stay would be nice, but then those dwellings are deemed illegal because of like the local municipality laws or like city laws or anything like that. And heck, there was even an article where this lady developed an app because her home was lost in a wildfire, and now this other company who's making a similar app, using her name, is suing her. Giant company is suing an independent woman who lost her house in a fire. Like, make it make sense, right? As they always say. But that's the world we live in. A little bit of chaos, a little bit of organization, a little bit of people on all across the spectrum. I remember BuzzFeed, that place. I remember BuzzFeed had and it was a perfect picture, and I didn't have my phone because I was on a run. This was like 10, 20 years ago, or 10 or 15 years ago, and I was on a run, and I stopped. I stopped because it was a picture perfect image of exactly what LA encompasses. And that picture was like, imagine standing on the sidewalk, and the building that you're looking at has all glass, right? Like all glass, you could see inside. And inside was sort of like a space where there was like a little stage, and it was a very wide open space, right? And in front of that building there was like a fence, like a metal, like normal a fence that it was like the black bars going up and down. In front of that fence there was a homeless guy, right? Normal homeless guy, sitting there, raggedy clothes, like picture homeless guy, sitting there. You're sitting down on the bench, but inside that you could see, pure as day, was tables set up and a complete buffet line. and like everybody in there like celebrating some sort of whatever event in there. And so I'm there, and man, picture worth 1,000 words, and I really wish I had a picture of it, but I'll never forget, is that in that I was standing on the sidewalk, and it was a picture where it was like the sidewalk, homeless fella, fence, glass building, looking great. Inside that glass building, all these tables set up for a whole bunch of food and drinks and like punch and like all of that stuff. And then everybody else in there like looking great and being, whatever. And that was one of those moments where I was like, holy shit. the you know and yeah, that always stuck with me in a way. No particular reason, no particular like rhyme or reason, but I think there's nuance with everything. You need to get into the details of it. I am in no way a person of authority or experience to talk about the homeless situation at all, because I am not a part of it, and I think what we do when we watch the news or when social media happens, it's like being outside of that world, you get just a small glimpse and a small glimmer. And this is what happens with like reality and documentaries, which is, film is what I work in, is that, on every documentary project, you're with it for so long, but there's so much like stories and essence that you have to pull out in order to make that story to work, that you lose a little bit of that nuance. And you lose all of those details that, that matter. It goes back to what I was saying before, which nobody watches, like, and I guess you could look at it this way, right? It's like, your phone, right? The phone that you have, it, right? You can make a call, you can open an app, you can, text a friend. But do you know how the actual computer code works? Like, and actually, like the communication, like when it sends and receives it from, the cell phone tower. Do you know how, like the camera, like pixels, and the way that it takes like pictures? Do you know how that works? Like, because I don't, right? As we do, we only know how to interact with a device. We don't know, now somebody might be an expert. You might know how like the very specific like parts of the software and parts of the hardware work. Totally cool, but then let me go one further. Do you know like how, do you know the process of like developing the silicon to like make the chips inside? Do you know like the pathing and all of that? No, it's like you don't. And I feel like knowing a little bit about something and like interacting with it, like while you can do a lot, you're still at the whims of not knowing exactly how this device works. And I guarantee you, not one person can describe everything that goes into a phone. And it's the same thing with homeless. Like, no one person can describe what goes on with homeless folks. And heck, that even goes with everything. Like, a news article that says XYZ about this can't possibly, describe all of the little nuance and all the little details. So whatever field or expertise you're in, you have to rely on other people a little bit. But just understand that the things out in the world that you don't understand, like, there is an expert who understands that, in a way, but just be humble about it and be like, you know what, you can't understand everything. You can understand a lot, and you can understand a lot about a very, very specific thing. And like for me, it's basically, Hollywood. And I even say that as like a general, and I'm still learning things about this silly town every day. But yeah, that's my 2 cents about it. Like, nothing too crazy. it's just it's just another day. A big old private jet up there. That's all right. If they wanted to solve the homeless homeless problem, like first it has to be, well, first it's going to take three people per one person, and that means and each one of those people are going to have to get paid a decent salary in order to take care of that one homeless person, because it takes 8 hours of care and 8 hours of, well, if a person is working 8 hours, then 3 times 8 is 24, and so you're going to cover that person for 24 hours. And it's just economically not possible. The systems are all there. The systems are in place. I believe that if somebody is homeless, who doesn't want to be homeless, they'll get themselves out of that situation in some way or some form of fashion. But then again, I'm like the one guy who is just talking out of my butthole, because I don't know the situation. I just feel for it and I want it fixed, but it's a complicated situation. Anyways, that's all I got for you. Man, I wish it was a little bit more exciting, talking about different things, but no, we went on that tangent because of that one fella who was pushing around that cart over at my place, over at the start of our drive, and I want to fix it, but what can you do? Don't know how. All right, well, hope you have a good day. Be safe out there.